technology is the new firewall, where human insight trumps every trick. We're not hacking systems, we're hacking behaviors so you won't click. No complicated code, just tried and true brain science at play. Social engineering for good, the best defense is in your mind today.
Welcome to Phishing for Answers. The opinions expressed here are solely those of the individuals involved and do not reflect the views of their employers. Get ready, because the next live episode of Phishing for Answers is starting right now with your host, Joshua Krumbaugh, the CEO of Phish Firewall.
Psychology is the new firewall, where human insight trumps every trick. We're not hacking systems, we're hacking behavior so you won't click.
All right. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Phishing for Answers. Today, I am here with Brian Liebert. He is a field CISO over at WWT. Hey, Brian, how are you today?
Outstanding, Josh. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's exciting to have you on the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and even how you got into cybersecurity.
Well, I've been doing cybersecurity for 30 years. That means I'm experienced, not old. That's a tagline I heard from someone and chose to steal it.
Hey, I'm using that too.
Yeah, the first 20 years of my career, I was a practitioner. I started down in desktops and desktop support. I worked my way all the way up to servers and so on and so forth. And once I did server support, then I moved into application support. Then I moved into networking. Then after you support SharePoint and Exchange and all manner of client needs and things like that, you get an observation of security from a 360 degree, always backward, forward, front and back. Learn a little about DNS, a little bit about networking, a little bit about servers, users, access, etc. And that makes you really well-rounded. And I got my first CISO gig, and then I got my second CISO gig. And then during the housing crisis, where kind of the bottom fell out of things, I took a 1099 position. And that 1099 position turned into 11 years on the other side of the fence. And again, I worked myself up, and I'm blessed and very privileged to serve as the field CISO for the East US and public sector now here at Worldwide Technology.
Awesome. Well, that's a great story. And I was very similar. Started out very technical and moved up throughout my career. Well, so human security is my passion. And one of the things that I've been really focused on for a long time is how do we use social engineering as a tool for good? And I want to throw that out there. And I think largely it's a lot of best practices. It's a lot of us sharing, the different tactics that we've learned. And so with that, I'd love to throw it to you and ask, what are some of the, top tips and tricks that you learn to help get better results out of your awareness initiatives?
Yeah, so the top trick and tip that I have learned is that we're all human. We can all make mistakes. I'm sure that's why you chose this path. I remember one time when I was meeting with my CIO, and he said, I've made a mistake and something terrible has happened. And he revealed to me that on one of his rather public accounts, he had gotten hacked, but it was an account that had a little bit of data in it. And I asked him, I said, you're the CIO of a company, and we'll call him Fred for the sake of example. And I said, Fred, how many places were you using this username and password? And he looked at me with a little bit of chagrin and a little bit of sadness. And he said, way too many places. And so from that, I learned that number one, it's education. And even those of us that know and understand this environment, we can get caught up in the day-to-day rigmarole of having to maintain these passwords in the accounts, and we can make a mistake. So number one, it's not going to be a surprise to the audience. It's education. Number two, it's policies and procedures and clear communication of that education and that expectation. And I highly recommend a signed agreement of some sort just to solidify in the user's mind and sadly for the liability sake. And then third, that training and that paperwork has to be backed up by a series of controls. And that's where a lot of us focus. We need safety nets for when I do make a mistake and click a link. What is protecting me to understand if that link is malicious? When I do accidentally fall for a phishing, spear phishing, solicitation of some sort, what backup controls, what safety nets are in place? And of course, the ultimate goal is to combine as many layers as you can to give as much training, as much documentation, and as many control layers of safety net and protection. So that's my mindset for human security. And of course, you got to circle that with compassion and understanding that people come from it to it from all different positions. That's one of the reasons why social engineering is so successful. So mix a little compassion in with those 3 steps.
So one thing that I look at often is the mind space framework. It's a behavior change framework. And you hit on a couple things in there. You mentioned compassion. One of the rules in there is that people will go to or do things that make them feel good about themselves. And that's, I think, part of the reason that you have to lead with compassion, because when you take a punitive approach and you don't make people feel good about themselves, but rather you make them feel bad about themselves, you're accomplishing quite the opposite of what you want to with your cybersecurity initiative. So I like that part. And then the other thing you said was make them sign something. And you also pointed out to make it clear, like easy for them to understand, or I don't know that you said that, you said, but to make sure that you clearly communicate what you expect of them, and then you have them sign something. And I think that's so critical, because most people take pride in, the large majority of people take pride in their word meaning something. And so if they're going to put their name to it, they will actually try that much harder. But if they put their name to something because they have to for their job and they don't understand what they put their name to, then that doesn't do us any good, because they're just signing it as a gesture, and there's no real, their word isn't behind it because they don't know what they're signing. So I think that's another really critical element that you called out there.
Yeah, it definitely has to be written in plain English, not legalese. It's kind of like the GDPR and the CCPA regulations that say you have to let the person know their rights, and you have to let them know their rights in a very plain and clear manner. If we write some lawyer document and have them sign it, it defeats the purpose.
It really
so
does.
the signed paper is a
I mean, I guess
necessary
you have your
thing.
compliance, your cover.
Yeah. But it didn't help the user. And in today's cyber, we have to help the user. And it didn't help the
CISO either.
It really didn't. Got lots of irritated people, with torches storming his castle or her castle.
Exactly. And I think part of that document, and we don't talk about policy enough when it comes to the human, but I think that part of that document has to be the why. And people need to know why they care about this. And it can't be some anonymous threat. You have to make it real. And I don't know, there's this behavior change formula, different. Well, I guess it's probably part of the framework, but it's a whole different formula than the framework I mentioned earlier. But it's B = MAP. And it's a famous Stanford behavioral scientist came up with it. And he said, in order to get behavior change, you have to have M, A, and P, and it stands for motivation, ability, and prompting. And so, the motivation is the why. It's their family and keeping them safe. It's their income and even more than their income, their stability as a result of that income. And those are the things that drive people and make them care. And so I think we have to connect to those things as much as we can. But I think ability is just as important, and that talks about how it has to be easy. And that's another thing that I've seen, is that too often security is hard. And when we make it easy, users like it a lot more.
You know, one of the most effective security awareness trainings that I ever ran, I know the CISO there at the time, he wouldn't mind me mentioning it. Bass Pro had me come, and they
Okay.
wanted me to do a security awareness on, I think it was Security Awareness Week or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And we decided, he and I together, that what we wanted to do is we wanted to make it personal. We were going to tell them all the ways to protect their home email and to protect themselves from scams at home and protect their children and their family and social media. But we were going to make a correlation between each of those items, that if you learn to protect yourself at home, you're also learning how to protect your business.
I
And we
love
got
it.
much more participation, because we said, here's a secure email client you can use at home. And guess what? This is what we want you to do at work too. Here's a way
Oh
that
yeah.
you can do
I bet
these
you had
things
a
at
million
home.
hands up and all kinds of questions.
And everything on the worksheet that we gave them that showed them all the resources for home also said, and by the way, this helps us at work. And we got some of the best participation he had ever had. And I got one more story for you before we end, but I'll let you redirect from there.
No, I mean, I like it. And I just want to add one little tidbit. When you send people home with that information, and I like to actually give them homework, like, hey, here is a threat on Roblox targeting children. Go tell your children about it. Or here is a threat targeting the elderly. Go tell your parents about it. What happens is that they go and they give that bit of advice. And now all of a sudden they're the security expert at home. So anytime somebody has a question, they come to that person. And it fundamentally changes how they think about things. And the longer it goes on, the more questions they're being asked, the more they accept it. And I think that's another great thing about it, because it influences the subconscious as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I used to do a not-for-profit that was about kids and their parents and safety online. And whenever we talk about things that are near and dear to people's hearts, we win their minds and their hearts as well. And
Yeah.
so correlating that back, the other story I wanted to tell you that I think you'll get a kick out of, I bet in your industry you may have heard of this, but one of the other most successful programs I ever saw, I don't know that I have permission to mention this one, so you'll just have to imagine with me. But they gave everybody these little clear plastic fish tanks with a little gravel in the bottom and a few little things inside. And every time they successfully avoided a fish, they gave them a little rubber fish to put in their fish tanks. And you know, you never know what's going to go viral, but they lucked
Yeah.
out and they went viral. And everybody was fighting to get these little fish. And the employees who had the tanks with the most rubber fish in it, it was a status symbol amongst all of the others. And they were getting eager to take their training and earn fish.
I love it. One of my favorite things to do. So, I mean, I'm fortunate enough to have millions of users scattered across all kinds of different industries. But I love to work with my clients and help them do phishing tournaments. And we do it exactly like that. We have like branding that looks just like a phishing tournament flyer, right? But the difference is you have to report either real fish or simulated fish, and whoever reports the highest percentage wins. And you make it a game against departments. And so I think that things like that are a great way to make it more engaging. And there's been a lot of scientific research on how gamification can be very effective. Now, I'm not saying that there's ways that it can be done wrong, but I think when you can make games out of things, it makes it so much better. And one of the perfect areas, or the areas that I think it's most critical, is phishing. Phishing is so often a negative experience for our employees, or phishing simulations. And I think that that's an area where just the simple act of telling them, hey, we're going to phish you and it's your job to spot it, that makes a game out of it, or that's a way you can make a game out of it. And it gets them on the lookout. But more importantly, you don't have this potential situation where you're like GoDaddy. What one was that, where they made the news because it's at Christmas time where they offered everybody a bonus, but it was a phish, and you know, they're on the front page because it's, you know, that's a bad experience. So we don't want to see anything like that happen. And I don't think anyone ever meant for it to be a negative experience, but too often it is. And I think it's as easy as making a game out of it.
The word gamification was in my mind as you were speaking, because yes, if you can make a training a little bit cartoonish or a little bit fun or have some funny stories or some humor in it, people complete it better. If you can make things not the same old, people enjoy it, do it better. And yes, we're both sharing instances where that's been very effective, and it's real world, it's proven, folks.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just, I mean, that I think one of the other things, so going back to B equals MAP, the P in this is all for, or stands for prompting. And what that means is, well, prompting can be anything. It can be your security awareness training. It can be a message or an alert that you send out to all of your staff about an email or a threat that you see coming in. And so the theory here is the higher the frequency of the prompting, the better the retention, the better the overall awareness. And that's how you drive that change. And so that's the reason I'm a really big fan of micro training. I would rather train my employees 30 seconds twice a week than spend 1 hour a year. And by the way, at 30 seconds twice a week, I am at under an hour at the end of the year. So it's a different use of the time, but it keeps security front of mind versus that sort of one and done traditional way of doing it that, yes, makes you compliant, but does little to change behavior.
Yeah, and the reward approach as well. I really love the micro training. And that's something I'm going to take away from this call as something that I'm going to focus on. We've also had luck with sending the fake phishing emails like everybody else does. But when you spot one, just a little note back to the user that says, awesome, you did a great job.
Great.
You spotted a phishing email. We're so grateful. Here's $5 at the company store. Get yourself a little coffee mug or something. You know, not everybody can do it with that type of reward.
And it doesn't even have to have a real reward.
Even an attaboy. Yep.
Yes, exactly. And by the way, praising the users is the best way to drive up your report rate. And I think that's one of the most critical KPIs if we're trying to measure culture change. I'm not aware of a better measurement of culture than report rates.
Yeah, and the rubber fish was perfect. It went nuts in that environment, and everybody wanted their rubber fish. And the people who had 20, 30 rubber fish, everybody was like, how did you get those? And the silly little thing managed to go viral, and the CISO had a great story from that.
I think it's fabulous. You know, so one of the things that I've focused on in social engineering for good is how do we use the same tactics that are used against us to protect us? And one of the things that I think is really critical that we always talk about, but it doesn't happen as often as it should, is top down. I see more often than not the CIO or CISO launching security awareness programs, but really it should be the CEO. And for the same reason that the CEO scam is so effective, that's the reason the CEO needs to be sending those emails and pushing security awareness.
And sharing stories. That CIO that I mentioned that we affectionately called Frank or Fred, I know it was an F name, but I've already forgotten it. He was willing to go in front of the company and talk about how he had made a mistake and made an error, and it humanized it. and it showed that any of us could fall victim. And so I agree with you. When the top is willing to lead and especially share a personal story, I had another high level leader in cybersecurity share a story how they were an intern. And while they were an intern, somebody tricked them into buying some purchasing cards and so on and so forth. And she shared how bad that made her feel when it all came out, and that it was a non governmental organization and it was a charity. And she just felt so horrible because a little bit of charity money had gone to a few cards before they figured it out. By sharing that story, she humanized it, and she
Yes.
took her pain and made it something that everybody was twice as willing to pay attention to, listen to, and make it a priority because she humanized it.
She did. I don't think it's just when they make the mistakes though too. I think social proof can work really well just to make the or be really effective to make the threat real. And that can be, hey, Cheryl from accounting just had this fish come into her email box or inbox. She reported it. She's a cyber hero, praising her publicly. So she feels amazing, but at the same time, using it for social proof because the average employee doesn't believe that they're going to be targeted. But when it's Cheryl from accounting, all of a sudden that becomes very real.
I couldn't say it better myself. I think the stories we're sharing today show the power of that human connection. And it also brings in that compassion that we talked about earlier.
And I think that's the most important part here. I mean, the old adage, you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. It's true. And it's applicable here too. I don't think that was so adversarial on purpose, but it did become that way partially because security back in the day when we first started implementing it was over the top. I mean, when I say over the top, it made it everything very difficult. And we're only just now making security where it's easy and it's the default option. And so, I think a lot of it comes naturally, but the more we can lead with compassion, the more effective our programs are going to be.
Well, and I think you just hit on the last piece that maybe is the only piece we haven't talked about, although I know you hinted at it. It's also easy. Make the training easy, make it readily available. If you have the ability to put something in your email client at your enterprise where the data is right there at their fingertips, easily available, easily shareable, the ease of use is always a factor in any successful cyber program. The easier you make it, the more compliance you'll have.
Agreed 100%. And that goes back to that formula, B equals MAP. A is for ability. And so the harder it is, the less likely they are to do it. And I like to, so, I have users across all kinds of different industries. So I always like to picture the doctor who is in the middle of saving lives. He gets his security awareness training, and he now has to pick between doing his training or saving a life. Well, obviously, saving the life is more important. But what if that doctor could get their training done while walking between patient rooms? That's why A, or ability, is so important.
Boy, you nailed it. And as I said earlier, and just to reemphasize for our audience, I really like what you said about micro training. And that's a perfect example. If a doctor's got his physician's desk reference that he uses all day, every day, and if there's a little 30-second video in there that he can watch, make it super convenient. It's already a tool he or she is carrying. As they're walking between patients, they can play that little video or read that little tip, and they've had their micro training for the quarter. I love that idea.
Me too. Obviously, I founded a company around it. Well, hey, it's been a fabulous episode. We are just about out of time here. Any final tips before we wrap up today's episode?
I just think repetition is the key to learning. I've learned things on this call. I hope our audience has as well. So I love the formula you shared. I recommend our audience make note of that. I love the gamification idea. I love the humanization and from the top down. So I think You've led us through an outstanding discussion that'll allow our folks to take tangible things back that'll make this challenging part of cyber easier for each of them.
I really see it as we need more marketing in cybersecurity. And what do marketing people do? They obsess over the smallest detail when it comes to messaging. And I'll give you a really great idea. So I had this guest on here, Denise Chrysler. She runs security awareness over at Danaher. And I mentioned that we need more marketing. And she says, oh, we brought marketing in this year. And they changed the phrase that we've been using, security is everyone's responsibility, to security is your responsibility. And I'm like, wow, that's profound. And when you look at it, there are social engineering or cognitive biases that talk about this. And so there's one that says how you word things makes a difference on how people interpret it. And so if it's everyone's responsibility, well, Brian has it. I don't need to worry about it. He's got my back. But when it's my responsibility, there's no way that I can cop out and say it's somebody else's. So it's interesting. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, well, clearly that's the better way to say it. But we have, as an industry, been saying this for a decade and no one else thought of it. So this is why we need more marketing and why we just need to come together and talk about these things more, because I learned today, just like Brian did, and I hope everyone listening did as well. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you back, I think, later this week, if not next week. Anyway, have a great one.